Okay, so we'll record this for any of the volunteers who weren't able to attend today. We know we got some people responding and saying they were sad that they couldn't make it, but we're so glad so many of you are here. So once again, my name is Carmia Feldman. I'll do this for the recording. Oh, I will, thank you. Somebody suggested muting. I'm gonna mute everyone for now. And we'll unmute you for the question and answer period at the end. So the presentation today is going to be about an hour, but then anyone who wants to stay for a question and answer period for about 30 minutes afterwards, we welcome you to do that. And we also welcome you to put any questions into the chat feature if you know how to use that. And we'll try to get to those questions at the end. Or you can just ask your question at the end as well. So first of all, we just wanted to say how much we miss all of you. This has been such a challenging period for everyone. We know it's been challenging for you. It's been incredibly challenging for us. And one of the hardest things for us is that we haven't been able to be with all of you physically in the gardens, in the nursery, in the reserve. It definitely is not the same without you, and it has impacted our work in so many ways. And we've really had to change how we approach taking care of our space and doing our other work without having you all there. And even more than that, it's just the bond that we have, that I know our staff has with all of you, and not being able to have that on a weekly basis. So we are just heartbroken that you are all not able to be in the gardens with us, and that we're not able to see you in the physical world. So we did want to take this opportunity to give you an update and just let you know what we've been doing for the past 6 months and some of the challenges that we're facing, but also some of the opportunities that we've had, crazy opportunities during this time that we might not have expected. So with that, I'm going to start the presentation. Okay, and I'm going to turn the talk over to Kathleen.
Carmia, did you want to put it so it filled up the whole page, or is that just my view?
What are you?
It's just, I'm seeing the next slide show up too.
It's in presenter view.
Oh, okay. How do I get rid of that? Oh, let me just say I am not an expert at this, so I apologize if there's some, let me see if I can get rid of that. Whoops. Okay, hold on one second.
But she's learned all of this, she had to learn it all in a week. So she is very appreciated for what she has learned.
So Emily, do you know how to get rid of presenter view?
That little drop down that you pressed said switch presenter and slideshow view. So I think that drop down would work.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me try this again. Okay, how does it look now?
Now you just start the presentation.
Oh, phew, okay. So sorry about that.
Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, Kathleen, take it away.
So again, I'd like to welcome you all officially. And what you just saw is exactly what's been happening the whole time. We've been a team figuring it all out together, and it has taken all of us. And it's been, like Carmia said, incredibly challenging. But at this point, after 6 months, we have been invited to take a step back and to try to understand what we've learned during this time. We did a presentation to the Retiree Center, and they were very interested because the Arboretum and Public Garden is so beloved to people who've been a part of the university and are a part of the community. So this is titled, Responding to a Global Pandemic, Unique Opportunities for Growth in Challenging Times. It's only been in the last month or so that we could even stop to think about what opportunities have come our way. It's been a crazy 24/7 confusion in the beginning, and Zoom calls, learning how to do that. And it's important to realize that still our staff, except for the essential workers outdoors, are all at their homes in offices remotely. So I've been working so closely with everyone, but I don't see them in person. So just like we're not seeing you, we're doing all of this work remotely, which has its own challenges. But I would like to say that Einstein has one of my favorite quotes: "In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity." So that's the theme for this talk. We'll be just introducing ourselves as we go along. So thank you all for coming along on this ride, and thank you for being the inspiration that keeps us going. Next. Well, as you might remember, it was just a short while ago that we were anticipating a beautiful spring season and plant sales. In fact, you see on the plant sale flyer that it said the plant sale was March 14th. 3 days before this, we found out that things were going to be very different, and we were not certain at all. So the uncertainty was a big challenge. We saw what was happening in France and around the world, and so I was thinking, you know, we might miss the whole spring season. Other people were hopeful that we might just miss one plant sale, but we just didn't know. And so this was a defining moment for us. Luckily, the Arboretum still continued the plants to grow. The spring came through, and for people who were able to exercise outside, it was still there for them. Next. But what happened is people began coming here in droves. You might remember on the news when the beaches in Florida were crowded and the mayors of towns were being criticized. I felt like I was a mayor of a town with a beach, and there were so many people just coming in to experience the Arboretum and Public Garden in new ways. I came upon this one day on my rounds. I lived downtown, and so I was obsessive about trying to deal with my stress by getting exercise, but I would also make sure I did the loop through the Arboretum to check on things. So I was just gathering pictures and information and sending it back to our team. Now what do? We have people camping out in the cork oak grove. So anyway, it was quite a crazy time. Then I came upon this. Next. A wedding in the Redwood Grove. You can see it's all set up for a beautiful wedding. And we started to realize what we have in the Arboretum and across the whole campus and public garden is something very unique and really, really critical to people. We've always known that, but just to see these life moments happening, you know, impromptu out in the Arboretum was bittersweet, I'd say, because what do? Do you tell them they have to move along, or do you hope that they're going to be safe? So we had lots of conversations. Luckily, we were part of a robust health system with scientific experts who could guide us. And all along, they were telling me that as long as we could physical distance, we would probably be okay outside. Calm down, Kathleen. So we just kept dealing with this. They said we also have 800 students on campus. It is a home to the students who can't get back to their countries, can't get home. So let's just see if we can figure out a way to navigate this so that we can stay open. So next. But what happened is our neighbors who love us so much started putting out their own signs. And I came upon this sign one Saturday morning when I was going out for a run and an inspection, and the police were there. The police had been called in. You know, people are not social distancing, people are not following the rules. So we realized very quickly we had to figure out a big communication plan with the campus. Next. One of the first things we did is we enlisted our communications team to develop the sign on the left. And if any of you have been out there, you've seen an evolution of these signs. But somehow Harvard and Arnold Arboretum of Harvard saw these signs. And if you look on the right, you'll see that they actually just took the same files and made their own sign. And that sign on the far right is from the Arnold Arboretum at Harvard. At this point, they're saying, can we just use your files? And Katie sent them the files, and all of a sudden they had the signs there too. And so we became part of a team of 7 public gardens across the United States that were able to navigate a way to stay open. It's really hard to fully appreciate what it was like for our whole public garden community to be shut down. And there were just 4% of public gardens remaining open. Harvard and UCDAVIS had the health expertise to guide us so that we could stay open, but it was very difficult. So we had Zoom meetings every week, at least once a week. How can we do this? Some public gardens made the mistake of inviting visitors back. You know, it's a safe place, come back here. And the news copters came out and took pictures. It's on the news and they got shut down. So we just slowly navigated it. Some people thought we should invite people back, but we just said, people know we're there. We're going to do everything we can to stay open. So it was quite an experience for us. And we were very fortunate to be able to stay open, and people were greatly appreciating us. Next. We had to double down though. You see that on the left, we got TAPS, TAPS is part of our team, the transportation, and they brought in signage that you use typically on a street. So we really upped the ante. That says, COVID-19, stay 6 feet apart. Some of you might have seen this. We put in hand washing stations at major entrances. So we were really going to town on this. But in typical Davis fashion, we did get a few complaints from the bikers in town who said that that sign at the entrance to the Gateway Garden was blocking their path of travel. But we just kept at it because everyone needed to know what the right thing to do was and that we were serious about it. Go ahead. Then we started to see some improvement. On my daily rounds, which I made more than once a day, I started seeing signs of physical distancing. At that time, we were calling it social distancing. Now people are suggesting physical distancing because you want people to stay socially connected, but you want them to be physically distant. So that was a good sign, and it made me feel a lot more comfortable. Next. So comfortable that my husband, Bob Gregoire, and I started doing physical distancing ourselves out in the Arboretum. We were in a pod, so we could stay close together in our anti-gravity chairs, but we would go out on a regular basis on Saturdays and have our coffee and watch the Arboretum from a safe distance. This is under the ginkgo tree near Lake Spafford. And I can report to you that this is the happiest we would look all week, because watching the people experience the Arboretum was very encouraging. It made us happy. I would say that Disney needs to move over because we were the happiest place on earth as far as I could tell. Whether kids had their new bikes, new puppies were experiencing nature for the first time, whether there were whole family groups having picnics, it was really incredible. And it reinforced to me how important the Arboretum and Public Garden is, because it really hit home personally with all the stress that I could go there and feel happy. So I will say to those of you who haven't been out in the Arboretum recently, it is a very happy place. And people are, for the most part, following the regulations and guidelines. So we have come to a good place. Next. But someone mentioned this earlier. when downtown has takeout now, where do you go to eat your takeout? To the Arboretum. And so we did have a trash issue, and we worked very closely with our grounds team to figure out what to do. We did signage, and we came up with this idea of putting trailers out there that could just be filled up with trash and carted away without touching the trash. It's hard to remember, but at this time, people didn't really know how the virus was spread. And so there was a concern that even coming near trash could promote virus. So we worked very hard on this, and I think it's still a challenge. I can see that, you know, especially holiday weekends, people just love the Arboretum almost to death. But we do have a way forward with this, and we're now, after 6 months, in a rhythm. Next. So this is just to give you an idea as well of how awkward these times were. I saw Emily when I was walking downtown in my neighborhood, and I couldn't believe it. There was a real live person there in front of me. We had been working on all the safety precautions, all the essential work plans, and there she was in the vest that we had decided was important, a vest that said stay 6 feet away. And that was one of the highlights for me, is actually seeing a real person and seeing Emily and having this moment 6 feet apart. So that just goes to show you how weird this whole thing was. But we made it through, and we're still not seeing each other in person. And so that's just how it is. Next. Our stay 6 feet back vests got the attention of Harvard once again. And so they made t-shirts. This is the director's wife at the Arnold Arboretum wearing the t-shirt. Some of our colleagues from other gardens who had to close down just thought we were being almost obnoxious. But we were staying open, and we wanted to protect our staff and make it clear that when they went outside, people would respect them. So we almost had a little fun with our work with Arnold Arboretum. And just as an aside, many of you know Bob Seeger, who's the campus planner. His son is a resident in neurosurgery at a hospital near the Arnold Arboretum. And he was so excited that the work we had done to keep our Arboretum open here at UCDAVIS was enabled their Arboretum to stay open. So he credited us with keeping the Arnold Arboretum open and giving him a place to experience nature and de-stress at this incredible time. So it's just been a small world story. Next. As you probably know, we are responsible for the entire 53 acres of the campus. That's the public garden part of our name. We have over 70 outdoor workers. And on one of my trips, I saw this grounds worker. You can see all the safety precautions, face covering, the trailer so that they can pick up trash without touching it. Also, one person per vehicle. So we were happy to say that this took a long time, but we were able to gradually bring our essential workers back in a very compliant and comfortable way where they all feel comfortable and safe. So that has been a really important part of our work. Next. And there are life moments and work moments that continue. We had 2 very important retirements that happened during this time. Some of you might know Chip, who is a laborer who picks up trash. He has a little gun rock stuffed animal in the back of his cart and is very friendly. And John, who was the head of the tree crew, both very friendly, 65 years of service at UC-Davis, retiring during a pandemic. Up till about 2 days before this, we thought we could have an event out in the stadium where everybody was far apart, but we realized very quickly that that just wasn't going to happen. The tides changed again, so we quickly organized a parade of all of the vehicles and all the staff in the entire grounds division and many of the Arboretum outdoor workers. So people decorated their vehicles. We had boom trucks, gators, bicycles, street sweepers, and we paraded across campus, and we met Chip and John. We went by them at the stadium and then circled around them and went back out with noise and fanfare. And the funny thing is, the folks in the parade said they preferred it greatly over listening to some of us talk and, you know, praise Chip and John. They thought this was much better. So this may be a new thing, retirement parades. Next. So during the pandemic, it was also coming to the attention of the national audience and beyond that public gardens were more critical than ever. So this was an article in the Washington Post. What's interesting and sad at the same time is that during times of crisis, public gardens are a refuge. And during 9/11, the public gardens in the United States, by and large, all opened free to the public so that people could have that nature experience to help them reflect and renew themselves. The opposite happened this time. The public gardens were closed. As I said, only 4% were open. So it just reminds us how important public gardens are. And some of the things you all were talking about earlier are things that could inspire us going forward. What more can we do to be that public garden that people so desperately need and value? So, as Einstein said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. So I'm going to quickly share a few opportunities that we found during this time. Number one, there's an opportunity to continue to grow the entire campus as a public garden. One of the surprises is that people started discovering all kinds of spaces on campus that they weren't familiar with. And so I invite you, as you feel safe coming back out, following the protocols, to check out some of the other places on campus. They're not crowded at all. The Arboretum is much more crowded, and they're really beautiful. And I think you'll be pleased at how the campus is developing more as a public garden. Secondly, we had the opportunity to showcase our story. And we were invited for a national meeting to talk about how the 4% of public gardens were able to stay open. And that was something that was very important to other gardens, and now more public gardens are navigating being open. Next. We also had the opportunity to serve the whole campus in new ways during the pandemic. This is our new provost, Mary Croughan. You probably haven't gotten to meet her. You might have seen her online or heard her talk on a video, but she's absolutely wonderful. She's our chief academic officer, and it was incredibly fortuitous. The search for the provost had been going on for months. There were 3 top candidates, but during the summer, she was selected as our provost. Our provost is our chief academic officer, and she comes with an incredible leadership background, an academic background, and she also is a public health expert. She has her doctorate from Johns Hopkins in epidemiology, and she has her undergraduate degree from UCDAVIS and is a tried and true Aggie. So I can't tell you how fortunate we are to have her here at this time. And the reason I'm showing this picture is because as soon as she got here this summer, she said, let's move things outside. The outside is 20 times safer than the inside. Up to this time, there was a lot of redrawing of buildings and air vent systems, and that's still going on, but she said, let's just move teaching outside as a public health expert. So this is actually a tent. You might recognize this. It's near the teaching nursery in our Vet Med Gateway Garden area. It's for the vet school. And if you kind of peek in there at the front of the tent, you'll see the vet students are having an outdoor class session. What's interesting right now is that tents are going up all over campus. This was one of the first ones to go up because all of the health schools are able to remain open during a pandemic. So the vet school, the School of Nursing, and the Med Center and the med school are all open. And so the teaching for the vet school is going on outside. There will be some very modified and limited teaching in other tents outside, but just very small number of these courses. But this was really interesting because it's the campus. We are intimately involved with all of the setup with the provost and with our campus leaders for teaching outside. There's also an opportunity to partner with the provost and our campus planners as we imagine the future beyond the pandemic. So Nancy Shapiro was just talking about that. Others were saying there are a lot of possibilities here. And I'm happy to announce officially that the Arboretum and Public Garden is now a major part of the provost office. So in addition to being with campus planning and our administrative unit, we also have a relationship with the provost office. This happened over the last year, and it's been official for about 10 months. What's interesting is that makes Mary Croughan my new boss. And I got to meet her over Zoom, which was Carmia helped me with. That was kind of stressful. I'm meeting my new boss on Zoom. But I was so impressed with the meeting. She's so confident about public health. And because of her focus on public health, the whole public engagement and student engagement side of the Arboretum is near and dear to her heart. Just a couple little things I found out. She loves UCDAVIS and being an Aggie. And she said that she only missed a handful of picnic days since 1975. And her family is very connected. Her sister was an employee, a beloved employee here at UCDAVIS. And there's even a bench that her family, Mary's family, got in honor of her sister who passed away at an early age. And it's in the Storer Garden. So she's very connected on every level, which I think bodes well for our future as we plan beyond the pandemic, because we know that online education is getting very popular. So it's really clear that the place is going to play a big role in attracting students. And we know that the Arboretum Public Garden and the whole campus has been an important factor in people's choice in coming to UCDAVIS over the years, and it will be even more important in the future. So lastly, I'm going to show one slide about the Campus Ready program. I know it's been very confusing and frustrating for all of us because a lot of times it was uncertain as to our future. And I liked what the provost said in our first Provost Leadership Council meeting. And I do attend those with all the deans and vice chancellors for the academic units, the Mondavi Center and the SHRM. And now the Arboretum Public Garden is represented in those meetings. And she started out her meeting saying, the only thing certain now is uncertainty. So I will say this, I am so certain that UCDAVIS is making all the right steps and they're doing their best to protect all of us. When I say all of us, I mean they want to protect the students, they want to protect the staff, and they're very concerned about protecting our community. And they understand that our community has vulnerable populations in it. And we do not want to be the university that has a story like you've been seeing on the news where we haven't done our part, and the students are causing a problem in the community. The other thing we've learned over this time is that public health requires everyone being in lockstep, top to bottom, and across all of the health, YOLO, county, the state, nation. So with Mary's leadership, the plans are just coming into full fruition. This is the worksite planning process that comes with the Campus Ready website. I would just type in Campus Ready if you want to, and UCDAVIS, and you can Google it and you will find this website. It will tell you all of the latest information about exactly what's going on at UCDAVIS. And this has been happening in the last month or so, getting this all together. This is a worksite plan that Emily's been working on. I can't tell you how many plans we've had to put together and protocols. Every step of the way, it's a new plan. And I want to just clarify, the first step was essential workers. It took us a few weeks to get essential workers back on campus, and essential workers are all of our outdoor workers. And the reason they're essential is because they're protecting assets and they're making the campus safe. So it's asset protection and safety. Because our nursery had such incredible assets, we were able to get the nursery open as an asset protection mechanism. So really up till now, it's just essential workers working in the Arboretum and Public Garden and on campus. Students, some of the students could be qualified as essential workers. So they were also allowed to come back. We are now in the second phase, which is to try to find a way that we might be able to bring program staff back on a very limited basis. So if, for example, someone needed to go into an office, they would be able to do that. But it's a very limited plan, and it's being reviewed right now. It would just be one person in an office per day and wipe down and all the safety protocol. So we imagine that most of us, if you can work remotely, they want you to continue working remotely, but this would just give us the ability to bring a few workers back only as needed. So that's where we are, and this is in the process of being approved. The third step for us would be looking more broadly at the community. Right now, they're saying there are no events allowed. There was a bit of time when they thought they might be able to have some events on campus, but that has passed, no events, and everything's virtual. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that as the community planning comes in, we can, and after we get phase 2 approved, we can start thinking about ways that volunteers might be approved to come to campus, but that'll be our next step. So in conclusion, I want to say thank you to all of you. We're so grateful that you still are engaged, and that's keeping us going. I want to thank all the staff who've been working on this 24/7. You'll see from the presentation that it's been an incredible time of accomplishment as well as challenge. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew, who's going to start taking you through some of the exciting things that have been happening.
Thanks, Kathleen. So I'm Andrew Folks, one of the assistant directors here at the Arboretum and Public Garden, and my emphasis is largely on the place, the outdoors, the operations, the maintenance, the planning, getting projects implemented. And with COVID, there was sort of the initial hiccup of, oh my gosh, what are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do as we went into the original suspended operations. And one of the things that were still considered critical and essential was construction projects. And along that line, with fewer students on campus, some construction projects were actually able to move a little bit quicker just because you didn't have that volume of people kind of trying to move through and around the space. And so one of the projects that we're working on, and I'll work on or go through several of these, is the Mary Wattis Brown path rebuilding. So this is across from environmental horticulture, where we had very steep ramp that went down on both sides that we were able to convert to a landing and plaza gathering spot, where in the future tours will be able to meet, and staircases that take you down into the Arboretum, as well as ADA accessible, universally accessible ramp down to Mary Wattis Brown Path. Can I go to the next slide? And here you see the completed path, which was completed during this time. And I keep having to remember it's been 7 months, so it's been a little bit of time we've been indoors. But you can see the big change from what had been the asphalt path with holes developing in it and the sides of it kind of crumbling. We've been able to create the yellow brick road path that started on the East End Gateway Garden, and we're moving through and connecting all the way to the yellow brick road segment that we have at Rack Hall Drive. And this just not only enhances the experience of the visitors, gives really great facelift to the Arboretum by getting this base infrastructure taken care of, but it sets us up for when we can go back to having tours and volunteers and such, to just having a better place to work in, a better experience for people that come and visit. Give me the next slide, please. We're also working on the LaRue Bridge. LaRue Bridge construction has been going on for quite some time. I think it's still planned to be done at the end of this calendar year. And this is replacing the old narrow span of the LaRue Bridge near the Arboretum headquarters over the waterway with a new bridge that will have pedestrian crossings on both sides, which will be nice, as well as widening the paths underneath the bridge and really changing the approach so that it doesn't feel so dark and claustrophobic, but much more open and airy. Even though the width of the bridge will increase, the fact that it will span all the way across the waterway gives much more sense of openness and also gets us the new paths, which again, continue to improve the infrastructure along the Arboretum. Go to the next slide. And this is an example of one of those new paths. So we'll have a universally accessible 5% grade path that snakes down from LaRue Road down to the Arboretum paths. So instead of the extremely steep paths, particularly in this spot that we had before, we'll have a much more gentle, universally accessible path going through our conifer collection. The nice thing about this is that it fits in with the larger master plan that we've had for the Arboretum to make handicap accessible and universally accessible paths throughout the entire length. And this during this lockdown, we have not stopped in that objective. The idea is to keep moving so that when folks come back, they have these new amenities and can continue to enjoy, everyone will be able to enjoy the Arboretum. Go to the next one. And also partnering with our academic partners. This is the large animal support facility that was just recently completed over by the Storer Garden. And we worked with them on interpretive signage that talks about the animals that are inside this area, because all the zoos were closed, right? People said, this is the only zoo that's open, and they would come out to look at the animals in vet med. So here, this gives them some of the education and the reason why we have the animals, and really opens, it's like another gateway, working with animal science. Go to the next slide. And you can see when we talk about this being the only zoo in town, this is where parents were able to come and take their children. Early on, a lot of the parks and playgrounds were closed and we were the only game in town. And so being able to accommodate both visitors during this time, but also setting ourselves up for the future. The vet med facility here, you can see the overhang is set up not just for the animals, but also for people. We want people to be able to come out and to be able to experience the animals and have shade, same as the animals. Go on to the next one here. And the Elizabeth Mary Wolfe Environmental Learning Center. And this is something we started working on before the pandemic. And this is going to really be serving as the hub for our Learning by Leading program, as well as serve staff and students that are working out in the nursery area, as well as all of the Arboretum and Public Garden staff and programs. We'll have a multi-purpose room in there, break room, and that will allow us to prepare for snacks and other events that we host inside the teaching nursery, restrooms instead of porta potties, as well as a new office space. So we'll be moving Taylor and folks out of the old coffee kiosk and into this building. And this is getting further along in the design phase. Why don't you go to the next slide to give kind of a conceptual. We don't know exactly if it's going to look like this, but we are working with the design and construction management on campus and procurement to purchase these as modular buildings, which will not only reduce our costs, but actually give us a little bit more flexibility over some of the implementation process. And right now we're very close to being able to go out to bid. And once we do that, we'll be able to start work on implementing this. And this will be hopefully ready to go by the time we have folks back and a vaccine. So we're looking at 2021 for this to be implemented. Let's go to the next slide. And then the Wyatt Deck, which is one of the more beloved spaces on campus, but is definitely showing its age. And as we were looking at doing accessible paths to travel through the Arboretum, the Wyatt Deck was one area where we always said, what are we going to do about the Wyatt Deck? We've got this narrow path that was kind of put in after the fact that goes just below the decking, which you can see here. And we've got the Arboretum Drive, which is a wonderful path for cyclists and pedestrians as well, but it's not in the Arboretum lower section. And then coupled with the fact that a lot of the wood is really showing its age, we've got areas where we've got deck plating that we've put over the front of it. We've got fascia boards coming off. So we said, what can we do to redesign this and still keep the Wyatt Deck, but create an accessible path of travel with the Yellow Brick Road? And so, next slide, please. Working with engineers and landscape architects and all of our staff in-house, came up with this design for the new revitalized Wyatt Deck, which still gives us the three distinct spaces, the concrete patio where the old concession stand and the piano are, a middle deck and a lower deck, except this time they'll be bisected by the ADA accessible 5% grade Yellow Brick Road, and create a lower deck that cantilevers just a little bit further out toward the waterway, giving more views of the waterway and the new weirs and drop structures there. And then creating seating around there for the students and the classes and events that are hosted out there, but still paying homage to the old design with the staircases, but the addition of an accessible ramp to the deck. So all of these deck spaces will be wheelchair accessible, unlike now, and will provide that handicap accessible connection at the 5% grade all the way from the Gateway Garden and the shovel sculpture all the way to Mirac Hall Drive. So that's a really, really big change, and one that you'll probably be seeing. Let's see, this will also be 2021. It looks like we'll be working on this. We are getting the final engineering drawings done right now. And then the job order contractor, which is kind of a pre-selected in-house contractor, will be working on the implementation of this. The same contractor that just finished up the paving at the Mary Wattis Brown path. So go to the next slide. And then lastly, the status of the Arboretum waterway. So our waterway steward, Nina Suzuki, she submitted a grant for a little over $5 million to the state, of which the campus is committed to matching about $2.5 million to do the entirety of the rest of the waterway rebirth project. So you've seen phase one, right, on the east end with the stair-step cascade of recirculating weirs, recirculating water over the weirs. Well, that idea is to be continued through the rest of the waterway, but with the creation of more emergent marsh, the removal of those concrete, spray-on concrete banks and turning them into earth banks with emergent marsh, much more like a natural wetland and a natural waterway. And so we are supposed to hear back whether we are going into round 2 of the grant by the end of January. And so we'll be able to keep folks informed whether or not we get that. But even if we don't, we're still getting all the permitting completed that will allow us to do parts of this project in-house if we don't get the external money to do it all at once. And so we're really setting ourselves up, even during this, lockdown pandemic time, for some pretty amazing projects in the future. And our staff have all risen to the occasion. Even though we're working remotely, we're as tight as ever, working across teams to get all the permitting and requirements that we have to do at the state level, and even at the national level through NEPA, to get these things done. So with that, I want to shift to Carmia to talk about some of the programs and the work we've been doing, continuing the programs during this time.
Thank you, Andrew. I just want to say we're running a little behind. We took a little longer to get started, and we have so much to tell you. We may not fit it all into an hour, so we're hoping that people can stay a little bit after, maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes later, and then we'll try to still have a Q&A period. So just as Andrew said and Kathleen talked about, a lot of the work we were doing at the beginning was getting our essential workers able to come back to campus, continue our construction projects, but the same thing was happening with the program staff. And my job as assistant director is really more on the program side with education, community engagement, fundraising, and things like that. And so, we were also trying to figure out what to do in this unprecedented shutdown. And so, as Kathleen said, we were all sent home. So all of the work that we do on the program side has to be done remotely. And so here you can see our Zoom meetings that we're having all the time with doing program work. And one of the programs that you all know about that is really important to the Arboretum and Public Garden is our Learning by Leading program. So this is our student leadership development program, and it is near and dear to our hearts as well. And it's students being out in the gardens, doing curatorial work, doing education programs, working in restoration and habitats and habitat building and things like that. And so we had a very hard decision to make when the pandemic started. What were we going to do with that program? And we really thought about the importance of this program, both to students, staff, and to the whole campus. And the program is aligned very well with the Chancellor's strategic plan for UCDAVIS. So some of you, I think, have heard of the Chancellor's plan. It's called To Boldly Go. And the #1 goal of that plan is to prepare students to address the challenges of a changing world. Well, you asked for challenges, we got them, right? And so, this was just another huge challenge, and we decided it was important for us to try to find a way to continue this program and, have an experience for students to lead in a crisis. And so we had about a week to make this decision because the pandemic shutdown happened about a week before the winter quarter ended. And then there was spring break, and then students were coming back. So we had to decide very, very quickly. And we just said, okay, let's go for it. We're going to turn this very hands-on internship into a virtual leadership internship. So here's one of our internship teams meeting for the first time on Zoom and trying to figure out, okay, now what are we going to do? And we thought about, what does the world need us to do right now? How can we help address some of the major challenges in this pandemic? And we realized that we were all in this period of isolation, and what we needed was a way to still connect with each other, still connect with nature. And we had already been working on our Nature RX programs, and Nature RX is the idea that people get a huge amount of health and well-being benefits through a connection to nature. And I want to recognize the Accelerate Foundation and Ernie Lewis, one of our board members who is on the board of the Accelerate Foundation. And they have given us a great deal of funding for the Learning by Leading program. And one of the areas that they have given us funding for is to explore this idea of Nature RX. And so because of that support and from the Accelerate Foundation and from other donors, we were able to continue this work through the spring quarter. And so we really wanted the students to think about how could we provide that connection, whether it was in person, if people were able to go to the Arboretum or not, whether it was virtual. And so many of our teams started thinking about virtual ways that people could connect to the Arboretum. So this is a virtual tour that our students created, and some students created podcasts. We had tree planting demonstrations, we had videos, and you can see we have on our website a brand new virtual activity button. Of course, this was very different than what we had been doing in the past. But our students rose to the challenge and began to really be creative with this new opportunity. So at the end of every year, we've been having a Learning by Leading gathering, a party to celebrate the Learning by Leading program. But what happened this year, if you remember, just a couple of weeks before the end of the quarter, we had the protests stemming from, dealing with with systemic racism. And that happened, started on May 25th. So really close to the end of the quarter. And nobody was in the mood for a party at that point. People were scared, people were upset, people were grieving, people were just, our staff felt the same way. Like we did not feel like a party was appropriate, whether it was virtual or not, but we didn't want to lose the opportunity to acknowledge what the students had done during this time and how they had really come through. So you can see we turned it into an appreciation gathering. Many of our students came, and I forgot to mention at the beginning that of our 130 students who had been participating in Learning by Leading this year, we asked them at the beginning of the quarter, if they wanted to participate in this new format virtually, and over 110 students stayed in the program. So that's just a testament to how important the program was to them and the connections that they had with their teammates. So this was our gathering, and during the gathering, we wanted to have some activities, and one of the activities was to ask students to submit electronically 3 words that described their experience in the Learning by Leading program during this time. And we didn't know what kind of words we were going to get because of all of the turmoil in the world. The pandemic, the protests, it was this double whammy. And so we were a little nervous about that, but we were so inspired by what the students submitted of their 3 words. And you can see how important it was for them to still participate in this program. They said it was inspiring, it built community, it was rewarding, it was meaningful, it was healing. They still got the health benefits from their connection to nature during this time. And so we were just thrilled that the program could still provide that for the students. Now, during this time, we also had some other opportunities to connect with partners across campus. And these were relationships that we had been beginning before the pandemic, but during this time, we were able to continue to grow these connections. So one of the partners that we've been working with is UCDAVIS Global Affairs and their Global Education for All program. And the idea behind this program is that all UCDAVIS students should have global experiences while they are students. So whether that is actually physically internationally or whether they are here on campus, they can still understand the global connections of what they're doing. And so Global Education for All is emphasizing the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and there are several goals that tie in very well with what we're doing: climate action, working in terrestrial ecosystems, and good health and well-being. So those are some of the goals that we are going to be making a more explicit connection for our students to those goals. And you can see from this quote, this is from Cameron Long, who's the co-coordinator of our Sustainable Horticulture Learning by Leading team. And he really talked about the global issues that they are working, his team was working on in Learning by Leading. So, air quality, that takes on a new meaning these days with the air quality, biodiversity, carbon sequestration, and ecosystem services, and just how important that connection to nature is for students and the community. So we're going to be continuing to work with Global Education for All in the future. The other initiative that we have connected with more strongly is the Aggie Launch initiative through the Internship and Career Center. And Aggie Launch is actually a big idea for the UCDAVIS Comprehensive Campaign. So we're thrilled to be able to connect with them. And they really believe that Learning by Leading is helping students with their career development. So Aggie Launch is about making sure students are getting good, meaningful, important careers as they leave UCDAVIS. Because the first job that students get after they graduate, or very close to when they graduate, is important for their long-term career trajectory. So learning by leading really is setting students up with those leadership and technical skills that they need to have a good career. And this is a quote from Karen Utsumi, who is was the co-coordinator of our watershed stewardship team in the spring. And she talks about how learning by leading is really preparing a new generation of scientists, stewards, activists, and educators, and that learning by leading alumni really can make a difference in their careers as they go forward. So what are we going to do this year for learning by leading? We have to continue in a virtual space. So almost all instruction at UCDAVIS is going to be virtual for the time being. So we are just embracing this and really thinking about what might it be, what might it mean for us to call ourselves Learning by Leading Global, working on global issues, maybe even connecting with students around the world. The Global Affairs Office is very interested in having a connection for students who aren't able to physically come to UCDAVIS. So we're working with them on that. And then the career preparedness, making that much more explicit to our students, helping them articulate the leadership and technical skills that they're learning, and helping them to begin their career search even earlier than they normally would. And that's one of the goals of Aggie Launch. So now we get to our community engagement. We are really thinking about how we can grow as a portal for community engagement, as Kathleen has talked about. And of course, the way that we've done it in the past is being in person, physically experiencing the gardens, working in the gardens. And right now we're not able to do that, unfortunately. So we're looking at other ways that we can engage our community. And I'd like to introduce Ann Daniel, who is the president of our Friends of the UC-Davis Arboretum and Public Garden, who's going to talk a little bit more about what we're doing. So Ann.
Thank you, Carmia. It's really a pleasure to see everyone. It's been a long time, and I know that this has been a challenge for all of us. And I'm really here as the representative for the Friends Board, and I know there's several board members on this call, so I thank you for participating. I mean, we know how critical, and you certainly heard earlier in this presentation, how valued the volunteer program is. And it is a priority of the Friends Board to support you. And we know that some of the things that you enjoy are continued learning. You like to have opportunities to meet each other, not necessarily just know the folks that are in your groups. So we're really pleased that we were able to offer those workshops. It seems like it was an awfully long time ago that we had that succulent workshop, which might have been one of the very last things that we were all able to do together. So we are sort of pivoting to a virtual look at what we can do. And just to recap, I mean, the volunteer program, there are approximately 300 volunteers that work and do such important work in the Arboretum, 20 teams that are doing things from propagating to caring for the plants to recording the plants in our living museum. So volunteers fulfill so many different roles, and they're critical to the success. And you see on this slide that a study was done and approximately 26,000 hours were donated by volunteers, but that translates into over $700,000 worth of free labor. So thank you all very much for all that you do. And certainly the university appreciates that and understands that. So we're really, we know that the disconnect was sudden. And so we all had to sort of pivot to new ideas and new things. And I really thank the various garden leaders that got us trained on Slack. I know many of you participated in that, and we enjoyed seeing, you know, pictures of our own backyards and solving bug identification problems via Slack. Always the snack time when we were able to be together was critically important. And so we pivoted to virtual snacks that I know several groups enjoyed. And so I think that, you know, we tried in as quickly as possible using the technologies that we could become familiar with to stay together, because being disconnected was really hard. That I know as a garden volunteer, as well as being part of the Friends Board, it's really important to have the personal connections with all of you. And so we tried as best we can to do that. The next slide, please. And so one of the things that a team of volunteers learned how to use MailChimp and worked with the communications team at the Arboretum to put together a volunteer newsletter that was really aimed directly at the volunteers. And so I really appreciate many of you that sent in suggestions, that contributed items for the newsletter. It really was a steep learning curve for those of us that put it together, but I think we all enjoyed the opportunity and the process. And it was really nice to have a peek inside several backyards of our volunteers, to have tips and learn from our volunteers about how to do bird identification and how to make hypertufa pots. And so for all of those folks that contributed, I can't thank you enough for that we really tried to bring a variety of information and ideas to you that you could share and stay connected to all of us, because that was just really important. And it was also nice to see pets and all kinds of insight into how we live our lives outside our volunteer time together. So the next slide. So in addition, I mean, as Carmia mentioned, and we are a community, and we are a community of volunteers that are the best advocates and champions for the Arboretum, but we reach out to the rest of our greater community through communication through the leaflet. So, this has been very important, and we'll continue to do this and continue to investigate ways to, virtually connect to our greater community. But I can't stress enough how important our volunteers are in that outreach. And so I really, thank you for all that you do to encourage others to participate in activities at the Arboretum, to visit the Arboretum, and certainly moving forward, that's going to be critically important as we look to the future. So looking to the future, so Andrew mentioned several things that were going to be happening in 2021, and one of them is that the Arboretum Friends will be celebrating 50 years. And so while our original plans for a lot of in-person activities have now had to change, we are still working on some ideas and some things that I think you will enjoy and be able to benefit from virtually until we can get together again. But 2021 is a big year for many, many things, and we look forward to that. Critically important is going to be a membership drive. We really want to boost people's awareness and knowledge of the Arboretum and how important the Friends program is to its success and ongoing sustainability. So we'll be launching a membership drive that will be focused on this, around celebrating those that contributed to launching the Friends organization and the talented people that have given so much over the past years. And so I really urge you to talk to your friends and family members and let them know about that. One of the projects, we saw those wedding pictures that Kathleen showed us earlier. So we know that people have personal memories that happen in the Arboretum. So whether those were photos of graduation or a child's or early steps or learning to ride a bike or something like that. So we are launching what we're calling a memories project, and you're going to learn more about that. So this will be a virtual way for people to share photographs and stories about what the Arboretum has meant to them. And as always is the case, the Arboretum volunteers, you're our beta group. And so you will be hearing about this early and hopefully within the next month or so. So stay tuned for that, and really we look forward to your participation. So we're all about staying connected, so please visit the website. It's constantly changing. I'm proud to say that we're going to be doing some new coverage of the Friends organization as a whole so that people can really learn about the history and can appreciate the contributions that the Friends group has made. And if you do not already receive the leaflet, but I think you're automatically in this because you're volunteers, but please make sure that you do receive all of the publications and contacts that we have. So I think that's it for what I have to say, but we really, thank you for all that you do, and the volunteers are so critical to everything, and the Friends Board is there to support you. And if anyone has any ideas for virtual things that we could or should be doing, please let me know. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Suzanne Uhlensvang, who will talk about more exciting virtual activities that are coming. So Suzanne.
I am. So thank you, Anne. And I wanted to say a special thank you to Anne and also Kristen Bennett of the Friends Board for their leadership and all the amazing work and creativity they've been putting in to keep the volunteers engaged and informed during the closure. So thank you both. I'm Suzanne Eulenspang. I'm the Resource Development Manager, and I work closely with the Friends Board and the membership program, and I often help support communications with the volunteers. So even if I haven't met you in person, you've probably seen my name on things coming from the Arboretum and Public Garden. So I'm here to just say a few words about how the pandemic has been impacting our community fundraising for the Arboretum and Public Garden. First of all, we are so fortunate that we are supported by the university and also receive significant support from our community of volunteers and members and donors and the Friends Support Group. That hybrid model where we receive the university and community funding has been so critical for us in being able to continue on in a stable way during these uncertain times, as compared to other organizations that may depend solely on the community or solely on the university. We're in a better situation. I'm going to share just a few examples, though, of how the pandemic has been affecting our community fundraising and how we're responding. So first, you can see the slide about our Give Day campaign this past spring. We do a Give Day campaign around UCDAVIS Give Day and Big Day of Giving each spring, usually focused on a particular project. So we were just in the middle of ramping up for our Give Day plans in March when the pandemic really started to unfold. So that threw everything into a lot of uncertainty. We had many discussions about should we even continue with any sort of fundraising during the April and May period. Things were just so unstable and uncertain. And after a lot of thought and discussion, we decided that we would move forward in a slightly more limited way because we were hearing that people were feeling a little bit powerless and they were stuck at home, didn't know what to do, and that supporting an organization that they loved and appreciated in the community was something that they could act on and feel good about. So we did move forward with our Give Day campaign. We changed the focus of it. Instead of being on a future project, we decided to focus on supporting the Learning by Leading students who were pivoting, as you heard from Carmia, to do all online and virtual activities. So I'm happy to report that despite the unusual circumstances, we had a great response to the Spring Give Day campaign, and we're so thankful to everyone who contributed during either UCDAVIS Give Day or the Big Day of Giving. And if you made a gift, thank you so much. It really made a difference for the students and their work and all the things they were then able to give back to the community through the virtual activities they worked on. So finally, I wanted to share a little bit about the plant sales. I know many of you have probably been sitting on the edge of your seat waiting to learn more about the plant sales, and it's been an interesting journey. We, of course, had to cancel the spring sales, and about in May, we realized that the fall sales were also likely in jeopardy, that we would not be at a point where we could get people together again safely to hold in-person sales. So at that point, we really started to work to rethink about how we could invent the plant sales in a new format. So we started what's been a long journey to figure out all the different parts that had to come into play to pull together an online store system. And we have been working so hard. We've got a great team who have been collaborating together, our staff. There were lots of different steps that had to fall into place to make it possible. We had technology approvals that had to happen through the Information Security Office of campus to assure cybersecurity. So we don't want identity theft or any of those bad things you hear about from so many places. We had to be collecting and preparing photos and descriptions for over 750 products. So Lisa and Angelica and their teams have been working on that all summer. We had to then set up the actual storefront of how it would look online, and Abby Hart and our communications team have been doing a great job and working out the details of that. And then we also had to think about the safety of both the staff and student workers at the nursery, and then the people who are coming to pick up their plants. And Melissa and Taylor and team have been working very hard on that. And then just keeping the nursery going, sustaining all those plants that were there in the spring, as well as adding in new plants to add to our inventory for fall. So all of that has been moving along as quickly as we could through the summer and early fall. So the good news is that we are now very, very close to getting our online plant store up and running, and importantly, having all the necessary campus approvals in line to make that possible. So we have this wonderful inventory of plants. Taylor, Lisa, and Abby and other members of the nursery team have been, primping them and getting them ready for the sales. And we believe that we'll be ready to launch our first phase of sales about the second week of October. And like in usual seasons, we will give first priority to volunteers and our VIP members. So you will have first access for shopping. And how it's going to work is that you will go online to our store, you'll be given a link, and then you will pick out your plants, pay for them online, and schedule a time for you to come and pick up your plants in person at the Arboretum Teaching Nursery. You will not be able to leave your car. We will do all the loading and everything, so it will be entirely contactless and very safe for all of our customers and employees. So one very important note is that we are making the entire fall season members only, and we're doing that as our way of saying thank you to all of our loyal members who have been so supportive of us through the closure and all the period that's been so challenging. So it will be members only. So if you have friends or family who want to shop, be sure that they renew or join as a member, and then they can shop as well. So we'll answer any questions about the plant sales in the chat. You're welcome to put questions there. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Garth Lindley.
Actually, we're going to go back to Kathleen for a moment.
Oh, okay, sure.
Oh, Kathleen, you are muted.
Okay. I just want to say thank you again to all of the volunteers and our volunteer leadership for helping us get to the point where we could be looking toward the future despite the pandemic. It's because of all the work that's gone in over all these years. I want to thank Anne as our president of the Friends Board for leading us through the thinking about the 50th anniversary and how we can be stronger into the future. It's so exciting. I'd like to thank Brett Hewitt for his work as chair of the Gateways Planning Council and for their work on all the innovative projects in the Arboretum, from the Gateways to the Elizabeth Mary Wolfe Center to the Learning by Leading program. I'd like to thank Nancy Shapiro, who's serving as our chair of a global campaign, and she's working with all the leaders across the world who are part of the global campaign for UCDAVIS. And Nancy is a huge advocate and a creative partner and has made sure that we are at the table and connecting at the highest level. So I want to thank all of the folks in these groups, all of you, and we're looking forward to a bright future. And we hope that we can get your thoughts as we move forward. Maybe we can set up some times, like Anne was saying, for us to share ideas on how we move forward. So thank you very much. Next, Garth.
There we go. Thanks, Kathleen. It's good to see everybody. Saw a lot of faces I haven't seen in a long time, so it's great to see everybody. Many of you probably have heard from me via email or via phone, and it's been great to have some great conversations with some of you. It's been great to talk and just catch up a little bit. Look forward to this when we can see you in your volunteer groups. So what I want to introduce was we're thrilled to, we were asked to be one of 19 features across UCDAVIS leading up to what they're calling the Virtual Innovation Spectacular. Many of you, or all of you, should have received an invitation in your email. If you haven't seen that, please take a look and see if maybe that's in your spam or something. And it's on October the 10th, which is a Saturday, at 4 o'clock. It's open to anybody, so please attend if you can. But we were featured in a lead up to this with our Learning by Leading program to share this with most of the, or all of the donors across UCDAVIS. And we're really excited about how this turned out with our Learning by Leading program. So Carmia is going to show us that video. I know you've probably seen it already. Maybe some of you have, but we just wanted to share this again with you.
Thank you, Garth. And it'll just take me a minute to switch over to the video. Whoops. Okay, hold on. Still learning.
UCDAVIS Arboretum and Public Garden, we believe that students learn best by leading.
And I think that's ultimately the part of my experience at the Arboretum that got me the job I'm in now, is sort of the mindset of understanding what partnership really means.
And it's helping students get work experience and project experience and team building, things that you don't necessarily learn in the classroom.
Building on decades of mentoring the next generation of leaders, our Learning by Leading program offers students unique opportunities to harness their environmental passions, apply their knowledge from the classroom, expand their job skills, and effect change, not only in our campus outdoor spaces, but well beyond our borders.
I learned how to be more of a leader and to be confident in my leading skills, which I didn't really have the opportunity to before as an adult in college, but really knowing how to conduct yourself in front of people who are out of this, college bubble, and who are respected in the workforce.
I love all the coursework I did, but I can't imagine having learned all that and not having had the chance to sort of get dirty and have that hands-on, boots-on-the-ground experience.
Each year, close to 150 students participate in hands-on leadership experiences as they develop projects to address critical issues such as climate change, habitat loss, food insecurity, environmental literacy, and more.
I helped build new trails, and then also looking at some of the more active restoration, which gave me such a broader perspective of what goes into managing public land.
We created some designs for what we called the floating wetland, basically a foam hexagon. And we designed and thought of what type of plants we wanted to plant in this foam, only growing with the water. Like we said, it's a wetland, and make it look better and provide habitat for the ducks and all of the other wildlife.
In the Learning by Leading program, students gain important leadership skills that propel them into competitive careers and position them to make a meaningful difference in the world.
Those were all things that as the professors would discuss them, I could visualize, and that's a lot of the work I do now for state parks in managing invasive species and trying to minimize fire danger.
It definitely introduced me to the world of project planning. So what I do now is I am an environmental planner.
Learning by Leading students, propelled by the real-world opportunities offered at the Arboretum and Public Garden, catalyze and lead change to help people and environments thrive.
I was working really hard at the Arboretum because I liked it so much, and it was such a great experience for me, and that provided just additional opportunities.
Being part of Learning by Leading totally changed my trajectory forward in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
With the inspiration of our Learning by Leading students, we can expect greater from UCDAVIS for the environment of tomorrow.
It does change lives, I know that.
So thank you all so much. That leads us to the end of this part of the presentation. And so thank you for sticking with us. And what we'll do is we will open up for questions. I'm going to turn off the screen share, and we can unmute people. And Suzanne's going to help moderate our Q&A session. So give me a moment to do that.